Aloha, my name is Mike Wooten, and welcome to my Hawaii Teacher Leadership Initiative Capstone Project. Before we get into the project, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an 8th year teacher at James Campbell High School in Ewa Beach, which is the largest high school in the state. There, I've taught English, digital media, and film. I've also taught at small schools like Wailua High and Intermediate, where I taught 7th and 8th grade social studies in addition to senior English. I have an excellence mindset, and I have a passion for social justice. I believe that education is a civil rights issue of our time, and that the quality of our schools reflects the level of equality that we value in our society. I've held leadership positions both inside and outside the school. Inside the school, I'm the Arts and Communications Small Learning Community Facilitator. I oversee collaboration between about 60 teachers as we share best practices and come together to create cross-curriculum integrated projects. I'm also on our induction and mentoring team, where we create the programming and professional development for new teachers. Outside of the school, I'm the executive director of Learning First Hawaii, an organization that I started in order to bring teachers together to give feedback on education policy. The project I decided to focus in on had to do with developing quality teacher professional development. I knew that a lot of the professional development that I went through wasn't of high quality, and I knew that poor professional development was both disenfranchising teachers and leaving teachers that needed training unsupported. In order to tackle this problem, I had to figure out how one teacher could affect change in a complex system in which several different entities shared power and influenced education policy. Some of the most important discoveries I made had more to do with how to gain and influence power than it did with professional development. Attending a training by Leadership for Educational Equity, I learned about how to identify power positions, developing a theory of change, how to form significant relationships with other stakeholder groups so that I could approach things collaboratively, and how to create levers for change that allowed me to move the issues that I wanted forward. I started reaching out to DOE officials like Steve Schatz. I also reached out to legislators like Bob McDermott and Takashi Ono. I started attending community stakeholder group meetings like HEA and forming relationships with other organizations like the Learning Coalition. I also started hosting social events to bring teachers together and reaching out to individual teacher leaders in different schools. I wanted to focus in on professional development because I knew that bad professional development was disenfranchising teachers and making them leave the profession. I also knew that bad PD was leaving a whole cadre of underexperienced teachers unsupported. Both of these had huge negative effects on our students. To our students, it showed that our teachers weren't really committed to their communities because they could only be counted on to stay there for a couple years. It also left students with underprepared and undertrained teachers who couldn't deliver the quality of instruction that our students deserve. Upon setting out on this mission, I thought I was looking for a change to the existing professional development policy on the DOE level. But I ended up finding out that there was no policy on the DOE level, and what I was looking to do was create a whole new level of accountability. Without any policy at all, teachers were left to the whims of administrators or curriculum coordinators that didn't really understand their needs and whose responsibilities to the DOE ran counter to those interests in the classroom. Using my needs assessment and thinking about the priorities of my capstone project, I picked competencies that I thought would contribute to my growth and ability to execute this type of project again later on. I picked interpersonal effectiveness so that I could focus on how to form tighter relationships, policy making so that I could craft clear, coherent policy that would appeal to those already in power, policy engagement and relationships so that I could build consensus and partnerships, and group process so that I could bring people together and empower them to express their collective voice. I think that if we can speak with a collective voice, then we can empower the teaching profession to address policy issues that teachers haven't historically been able to affect. While that means that I'll have to work with DOE officials and legislators later, right now, my priority has to be on working with teachers. I knew that I couldn't tackle this task alone, and that I'd need a partner in doing so. Meg McCormick, a teacher at SEEKS and former Teacher of the Year, stepped up to the plate and was absolutely heroic in the level of responsibility and ownership that she took over this project with me. Meg and I created the Professional Development Policy Fellowship. We brought 10 teachers together from across the islands for a series of 5 meetings in which we had speakers and readings dedicated to the topic of quality professional development. At the end of the research phase, we gave out writing assignments. Fellows are now currently writing a professional development policy advisory paper that will be handed up to the Department of Education and to other stakeholder groups. This paper will outline the needs of Hawaii's teachers in terms of professional development, and will make suggestions on policies that could be adopted to ensure the quality of professional development for all teachers in Hawaii. In order to accomplish this, we first had to identify the fellows and set up the programming for the meetings. We also had to invite the speakers and select the readings on professional development. After conducting the meetings and doing the research, we then had to give writing assignments in order to group write a document. Then we had to collaborate to bring the document together, and then network with other education stakeholders in order to gain support for the document in a way that would make it appealing for the DOE. The number of tasks and responsibilities this bestowed upon Meg and I was both daunting and exciting. One of the first things we did was change our website. We wanted to create an online application that was both very interactive and informative about what the expectations for the fellowship were going to be. We were very explicit about what our goals were, and we went ahead and used the opportunity to set a lot of our programming. We pre-stated all of the dates for all of the meetings to ensure that the fellows would be able to attend them, and we decided what the topic for each meeting was going to be. The application questions asked fellows about their past experiences with professional development, as well as asked for their input as to what type of changes they would like to see happen. In an effort to recruit the right people, Meg and I completely exhausted all of our contact networks. We campaigned on Facebook, sent it out to Hope Street Group, contacted the National Board Certified Teacher Group, exhausted our own email lists, and even used our contacts at the Department of Education to send it out to principals, some of whom disseminated it to their own schools. From 14 applicants, we selected 10 fellows who we felt reflected the type of mindfulness and commitment that we would need in order to make this a success. I couldn't be more proud of our fellows and the professionalism and commitment they demonstrated throughout this project. One of the first challenges we had to overcome was our funding stream. Our grant provided us travel funds for only one fellow, but we wanted to include 3 Neighbor Island fellows in the fellowship. We managed to use our network of partnerships in order to diversify our funding stream, and found the funding that we needed in order to pay for the travel for all 3 fellows for all 5 meetings. I want to take a minute just to thank the NEA and HSTA for their financial support of this project. Our third funder wished to remain anonymous. We're going to honor those wishes. I wish that I documented each one of our meetings with photos and videos, but unfortunately all I'm left with is our framework. I guess we were too wrapped up in the work at the time. We outlined who our speakers were going to be and what the focus of each meeting was going to be. We also designated all of the readings and the intended takeaways. We called upon all of our contacts on the Board of Education, within the DOE, at the UH School of Education, and at individual schools to find out who the best people in Hawaii would be to speak with about the topic of professional development. Our guest list included Harvard graduates, charter school leaders, technology experts, professional development consulting companies, HSTA representatives, and University of Hawaii School of Education professors. We also created a program folder for our fellows and started lines of conversation on specific topics. Inside of our meeting folders, fellows were able to refer back to the research readings that we did. They were also able to fill out quality surveys and reflect back on some of the takeaways for each individual meeting. As the fellowship went on, we built up libraries of feedback and thoughts and ideas that the fellows had about how we could change professional development policy in order to meet their needs better. Everything that we did had a heavy research base because we knew that that was going to be appealing to the people that we wanted to present this policy to. The contradictory and sometimes vague nature of some of the research was troublesome for a lot of our teachers, but one thing was for sure, there was certainly no shortage of it. We found great resources from the DOE itself, resources that they had written but weren't actually using to design or inform their professional development policy. At the end of the series of meetings, fellows were given writing assignments on topics surrounding the issue of professional development that they found particularly interesting to them. That will move this project into its next phase. We're going to use the template that we created last project when we created a policy advisory paper on the issue of student attendance. The document will include an executive summary and a problem brief, and then clearly outline both principles and specific actions that schools and the Department of Education could take in order to better support quality teacher professional development. At that point, I'll have to rely on my networking skills and partnerships in order to build consensus for change. and then try and affect it at a high level. The conclusion of the fellowship and being at a point where I'm moving on to promoting the policy brings an interesting question about what constitutes success. In terms of having a document, after having seen the fellows' thoughts and ideas that they're going to include into it, I'm confident that the document's going to be quality, and that does constitute a success. I feel like there was a proof of concept as well. We demonstrated that you could put teachers together and collaboratively write a policy. I feel that my personal growth goals were met as well. If I were to do this project over again, I'm sure that I could do it better. I learned that I needed to start further out in forming the relationships that I needed with speakers and location providers. I learned that I need to incorporate people that I'm going to be asking to vet this policy into the process of writing it. And I learned that I needed to have the fellows writing a lot sooner. Whether or not this project results in systemic change or a significant policy switch has yet to be seen. But the work it takes and the learning curve that I'll experience working towards that is something that I'm very much looking forward to. To me, this project is just the tip of the iceberg in a much longer process of empowering teachers by demonstrating that they can lead schools, drive policy, and command the profession. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to learn more about my Teacher Leadership Initiative Capstone project.